Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Michelle Anthony, Chair of the Wilkes University English Department. I'm here to introduce our first Allan Hamilton Dickson Spring 2021 visiting writer, Zach Linge. A couple of webinar notes. Only Zach and I are visible tonight. We are recording this event, but no one can see or hear you, the attendees. This event will be available with closed captioning on the Wilkes University YouTube channel shortly after the event. If you just search Wilkes University on YouTube, simple to find. Please note the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If you have a question for Zach, you can put it in that Q&A at any point during the event. Only I and Zach will be able to see the questions, and I'll read them to him and after his reading, and we'll cover as many as time allows before our 8 p.m. end time. The Allan Hamilton Dickson Endowment was established by the forward-thinking woman, Dorothy Dickson Dart, in honor of her father in the early 1960s to encourage enlightened teaching, extended scholarship, and creative writing in the literary arts. Along with our current English students and faculty, it is the reason Zach is here. Zach spent the morning with 19 students in our senior level Modern American Poetry class, where the class dove into works by two late 19th century poets of color, Paul Laurence Dunbar and Alexander Posey. He spent the afternoon leading students in a poetry workshop and language frolic. You should hear our group poem. I'm delighted he could be here with us tonight to share with you, our wider audience, what a writing life can produce and be. Zach Linge's poems appear in AGNI, Best New Poets 2020, New England Review, Poetry, and elsewhere. And their second refereed article was published in a special issue of African American Review on the works of Percival Everett. Linge is the recipient of scholarships to the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop and the Sewanee Writers Conference, and lives in Tallahassee, where he is tonight, where they serve as editor-in-chief for the Southeast Review. Today, Zach noted that as writers, we get to capture moments when language starts to follow itself, and we follow it into unexpected territory as it develops its own logic. I could say the same for the space that Zach has carved out for us so far today. Over Zoom, during this pandemic, those sessions have had their own stunning logic of delight. Thank you, Zach. Please join me in welcoming Zach Linge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anthony. I believe I'm highlighted now and I should be able to proceed. Wonderful. It is such a joy and an honor to be here. And it was such a privilege to get to speak with so many bright students this morning. Just lit up my day. This has been something I've been looking forward to for months. And so I want to thank very sincerely Dr. Anthony for your honoring and support of my work and your belief in me as a poet. I'm tremendously grateful. And I want to thank all of you who are present tonight. I'm hoping that some of the people with whom I got to meet earlier today are present. I hope that we can continue the conversations that we started earlier. And to all of you, I hope that the conversation that starts tonight in my sharing the poems from this manuscript is one that is rewarding. I'll be reading from my manuscript, which is titled His Visible Bones. It's divided into 3 sections of 15 poems each, and the manuscript ends with an additional poem after the 45th. I'll be reading 5 from each of the sections and then that final poem. Some words of caution before I begin. If this were a movie, I would rate it R. I just want to say that poetry in general is not for everyone, and my poems might not be for everyone, but if you are here, I hope that you hear some similarity perhaps in the feelings that I express, and maybe some that you may have shared with those experiences. And so without too much commentary, I'm going to start at the very beginning in section 1, where we find our speaker struggling to navigate in the world. Fingers on a gay man. A pair of adolescent boys grabs a rabbit to shear off its ears. It doesn't matter why, whether they're sad or from the city. What matters is what they do with their hands. Hold the blade, hang the rabbit by its ears. But the rabbit says, I met a truck stop priest in Mississippi outside Books-A-Million. Should I tell you what he said? And the boys pause to consider, so he continues. We sat into the night talking about anything. His gay ex-wife who practices witchcraft, masturbation with vacuum hoses, his fetish for boys' leg hairs like your own. They giggle at this and scream, set the rabbit down, and listen. The priest in his collar and cross necklace spoke, though his face transformed. He grew freckles where there weren't any freckles. He grew beards where his chin was smooth, and his eyes were more ancient than all the lakes in Mississippi. What did he say? What did he say? The boys demand, wanting to learn more than anything. Continues the rabbit, the faces spoke, not the priest, in voices that traveled to my brain. They taught me lessons. First, that every soul is a thread in a cloth that floats through black everything, sparkling like snow into a lake. So you and I and everyone we know are iterations of these souls, these cloths, some newly woven and some old. The boys, what else did the faces say? The rabbit, they said that they and I were of a single cloth, of the type who dies and rises again. And what about us? What about us? Demand the boys. And the rabbit jumps off the rock and runs because the boys hold a knife and can't recognize a parable or my face, however human. I want you to feel good for Baron B. On the blacktop, along the track, against the gym's bricks, somewhere, you said, I teased you in middle school. Somewhere, relentlessly, you said, are you gay yet? You were lunching with courtyard polyglots, fluent in slang I'd learned to sling, brown, white, 8-ball, triple C's. I'm not fucking gay, Zach. The evening you came out to me, we stalled in your mother's kitchen with plastic stacked in the sink and camel filters afloat in doggy boxes. Your father collected unemployment from his dent in the yellow couch, growled faggots through the plaque cemented to the edges of his teeth. He maintained a habit with watches, gathered second hands, spun gears into and out of place. Sorry. I blew smoke out the window in your bare bedroom. You taught me to cut hair with a Bic, pressed my thumb against the razor at the nape of your neck, said, the less pressure, the more texture you get. Thanks for taking late night pictures in the playground. Costume earrings, skinny jeans, knockoff Swarovski. You smeared lipstick across my face. I kept my eyeliner on straight. Our hair was magnificent, Baron. Thick, dry, unruly curls. You called me the only man who could take heroin or leave it. We kissed for the first and last time at the stop sign. I want you to feel good, you said. I didn't. Your name is written in thin, circular stains at the base of every spoon I eat from. You come back to me in stages. I don't know who you are. Even the playground looks like you at night when nearby sirens bore and skinny dogs get kicked. We could make it so you don't feel like the side of a face ground into pavement. There are so many clean walls where I live now. I've got computers. You could use them. Born beasts. In one version, Io runs from Jove, who forces himself upon her, then, when almost caught, covers the forest with fog and turns his victim to a beast. How like a man to then gift her to his wife. How like a man's god. How it ends, Io, returned to human form, bears a son, Epaphus, and is condemned to, or granted, eternal life. Some of us are born beasts. We're taught to scratch our lovers' names into our arms. We bear no one and nothing. We bear man, bear men, human, a moment the length of God's whims. We lap rivers and float earlier, drunker in them than we'd intended to be. We beasts to bested. The center of parable doesn't hold when its violence is lived. There is a pantheon of gods, but not one from whom I have hidden my face. The edge of a still and dark lake. Fluorescence through eyelids is prenatal pink, and it means the pills didn't work. Someone is pinching my thighs hard. Somebody's shouting, "What did you take?" And I cry out, I think, but the sound is distant. And who would leave such heavy, welcoming blankness, this kind sleep, soft as the fur between a rabbit's leg and chest? The world is over now. I sense this. The immediate past is a mirror away, and people who love me hover like a shallow breath at the edge of a still and dark lake. Fruit juice through a straw, familiar fingers dabbing petroleum across my crusted lips. Repeated pink in my eyelids cries daylight, so I'm exacting people who love me again with simple questions answered by sideways glances, through patient smiles. Yes, we are in Austin, and you've asked us this. The machinic umbilical cord drips gently. Brushes of rouge will return to my face. People have reasons for killing off queers. A shrink with a clipboard enters to ask why I tried. What is it about this body I hate? Oh, how we touched each other's lips. Lovers in hospitals and rehabs. Their unwashed mops, dirty blonde, brown, and in kinks. Thin hair on their thick upper lips, foreheads that stretch like a drum. The first says, I'm not ready to do more than kiss. There's nothing I haven't done in bed, the next says. Their skin tastes of ointment, though I haven't seen the insides of my arms in weeks, and don't know how put together men I've been with are or ever were. Their stink like walnuts in a hot pan of spice. Their grease like strawberry stains on fingertips. Their teeth orange as lilies. But oh, how we touch each other's lips with the softs of our thumbs gently, as if we could stand to hold someone, to want something ugly, the tags still hanging from our wrists. And so we conclude the first section of the book, in which this sad and dismal speaker has been very drunk and very sad and very high for a long time. And we move into the second section of the book, where this dear speaker is trying to sober up and see the world through sober eyes. So we'll begin this section with a poem called Walking Through Paris, Newly Sober. And it's written after Alicia Ostreicher. This is the time we see through 3 sets of eyes or more. The road is wide, the road is long, the road is covered in flames. We are stationed at posts. We stand at posts looking and feel as though we are stationed. On every corner, a thick glass box. On every corner, a beady-eyed graduate strapped with a rifle. We look for the bees. Our buds dry, crack, our petals like old roof tiles, our tongues on the tiles, our tongues on the cracks. We lick our wounds, our petals, our paws on your laps. We droop with our paws on your laps. We dream. Hallelujah, said the old woman. Hallelujah, said the bud. Hallelujah, said the breeze, carrying. His visible bones. For Josh W. On his legs, when he squeezed out of his papery jeans and into tight cotton briefs, black hair between my fingers, his beard beneath the steep brown hollow of his cheeks, the way his ribs would ripple through those worn through vintage hairband tees, his hazel eyes, how they caught the glow out of any light. I was close enough to watch them fade. Josh, the skin above his knuckles, tightening against its joints. Josh, the yellow of his breath. Josh, the stale, kind kisses he gave. I thought someone can mean it when they care for me. I have tried, but I still can't explain how it felt like grief to love this man. How his death feels only like flipping through old photographs. Josh, and his visible bones shaking. Josh in a death rattle again. Josh, rattle, roll. I would give anything. I would disappear the toxic fix tugging on his arm. I would suck the foam of sickness out from in between his lips. I love this man. I can't pretend to have known him very well. Josh, a name? Rattle on a kitchen floor. You could always drink. So your cell phone broke, and your drinking friends are dead. The rest of them are unavailable, withdrawn to private homes. Your partner left you, and your parents both are gone. You could say you find yourself in a uniquely shitty situation. Let's get back to the basics. You have feelings, yes, and they are strong. You begin to understand why grief-struck women in antiquity are described as beating their chests and tearing out their hair. Might seem a bit intense, but it makes sense. It makes sense as in something seemingly senseless is made into something else. So take a minute to sit with your senses. What do you taste? The copper twang of a freshly busted lip? Yesterday's coffee on your teeth, a bit of lemon, peppermint. Brave staying with proprioception, the sense of space. You could go back to drinking. You could always choose to drink, but then you'd have to move through place. Why not linger? What can you touch? What do you taste? Burnt onions and oil? Lamplit walls and hardwood floor inert, but for the dust bunnies twitching like an ear? Look at that. The observable world is suddenly both what you sense and what you make of it. Can you smell it? Taste it. Do you hear how intuitive this is? I'm beginning to believe nearly every beast can be defanged, which isn't the same as saying a struggle wouldn't have a bite. It means the senses are as small as the sense we make of them. That scab on your lip could be pain, but it tastes like pennies. Open to the night. To have a house leaking AC out wide open doors because it can't contain the friends within. To hear a man's laugh crack in childlike earnestness and see a sectional of men around him wriggle in their happy tears. To be another voice inserted anywhere in the conversation, blurting out, I like this game, or blurting out, well, anything. To say, to be a sound and heard, to lick orange off my fingers as another neighbor dips a chip in a big red bowl with her social circle seated around the table, to have, to hear, to say or be anything with friends. This is a long and cozy carpet. Bring the joy in. Tonight, leave all your windows open. And the last poem from this section is called Spirit Experiment. It's a strange one, and it's got long lines, so bear with me if you will. Spirit Experiment. I would like to know where the shadow men have gone. Those, what, figures? Phantoms? No, and neither. Those shivery, quick shifting, floating, creeping things. Whereas into the vertices of my childhood rooms they once withdrew, as if tugged to upper corners by their tails, they have for years been absent. I want to understand why. In my sleeping sister's room, I saw a watcher, its spiked mange. It sucked the hall light through its hyena ears. Sitting on its heels, claws planted on her chest, it wrenched its head around and took one look at me. As fast as lightning sucked back into the sky, it whipped around, creeped across her wall, and dissolved behind the closet door. I need a reason these shadow people dove through the swayed skirts of grackled branches, bringing a sense of dread not even corpses bring, no matter the gore, nor the fact of maggots chewing through white tongues or replacing fingernails with a thick, wet squirm of rot. The horrors! Where do their capes and top hats hang? Into whose smiles have they recently descended? It's easy to be confident when I'm the summoned idiot, ridding houses, trees, and and friends of entities. But what does the exorcist call God when he's a nerd to seeing demons? Beacon of impalpable calm? Toothless commonplace? I want to speak to the people and visit the houses visible. Wickedness haunts today. I've been praying to a presence bright enough to rip the sting off shadows, but it never shows its face. I've been looking for and listening to any being that would answer me, but the nights are quiet lately, and daylight never speaks. And into the third. The speaker has been sober and terrifying thing happens. He gets feelings for a boy. Just the most awful, mortifying thing for a sober person to experience is deep feeling. So we're gonna see how he handles it. And we'll start offered as suddenly a forest. Imagine a desert and call it yearning. For years, nothing but sand in your teeth. The viper skulls you mistook for cherries, their crunch, dry heave sobs beating your chest. You could have opened the cage of your ribs like a prayer book. Remember how you praised every misplaced grace of water, how the collected drops shot through you with diseases, every fresh found fruit a hallucination, each scavenged seed a swallowed nail, until one day you look up from your feet. A hawk condescends from the sky, its cry saws the air, and there's suddenly against your face an entire forest. You stand stupidly at its feet, this monolith so inevitable. You should have seen it cleaved between the sand and the sky like a sheet, coming with its dark, its greens so deep they're purple, as the veins of your legs, so purple, you could unthread them each and gum the grapes off. These trees offer you everything. At home, your lover bends against so much scrutiny. He wanders into becoming anything other than a forest. And you made it this far. but linger at the edge as if you could enter. The first day of equinox in glitter. From a deep blue bath bomb with a golden star that smiled, glitter. Tonight marks the first day of equinox in glitter. We smoke lazy cherried American spirits, arms clacked in glitter. I finger the thick hair on my upper lip, rubbing every strand with glitter. The full round turn of my fingertip exhales in the starlit breeze of glitter. The knee cap, the flat thigh roped in thin shorts, the leg inside glitter. I check each of my testicles and they are glitter. The man's nails in the bare black bedroom, coated in paint that glows in the dark, coated now in glitter. Under the blank roof in his cinder block palace, 2 a.m. glitter. Fuck me, fuck you, we take turns, glitter. Although it feels so good to read. Okay, I feel like I can breathe after I read that poem. My boyfriend is a good man, and as such, incomprehensible to me in his living bulk. So I envision him as a toy made of foam and pliable wire. Standing 1 foot tall, his sleeves are blue. His kneeless legs are a dulled Crayola gold. I freight him in a backpack to a dell. He bends easily into whatever shape I twist, but lately bristles into fractals of cracks in his dried polyurethane. His honeycomb foam innards peek through the fissures. They look like lungs, so he seems to breathe when pulled open. I float him in a puddle, throw bit-off stems of orchids about his head. Then he shares his feelings, foam boots, hands with me. Once home, I bathe him with a toothbrush. Suspicious roots might remain where bristles can't quite reach, or seeds that have gotten off with the pollen. And I hate these buds for not growing quite, for being buried so deep as to be unavoidable. And I hate the seeds that stay with us that eventually might root or take. These feelings I have quietly. But sometimes when the day makes us lonesome, I snatch him up off the sofa and into bed. I press against his squishy flesh, and he warms fast, even if he only holds me when my hand twists his arm behind my back. We say nothing. We stare. On a light quilt, we lay and we laugh at the fact of our limbs. Start with the kiss. After Richard Seiken. Delayed by conversation with B, the recent victim of a hit and run, I drove to Allan from campus, which put your place just off my path. So I stopped by for a surprise kiss, left the car running, and knocked before I entered. You recoiled at my lips and took a swig of water. Baby, are you drunk? Cheating? These are the questions you think I'm asking. You think I'm looking for a reason to distrust you because I'm looking for a reason to distrust you. A fact I've only recently acknowledged, so I can't say I'm sorry yet. My lips, you see, are chapped. Your walls are thin. You don't have carpet, and the rugs boast holes worn in them by someone else's feet. It's outrageous to me to think that I could dance without burning too, without hurting you. But when I can, my love, say sorry. I'll start with the kiss. You were right to think I meant it as a trap. I'm ashamed to suspect most handles turned would open to you inside another man. In the context of love, my body begins to belong to your body. Your lips become my lips, and I am trying not to be contagious. I never wanted to abuse the house key, to reorder the papers in both desk drawers after shuffling through and around them for nobody knows what. confirmation. I didn't want to rifle through your closet, to check your trash at night, or count the empty liquor minis in your recycling bin. I want you to be the one with the secret. So I have a secret. I want to break this, so it's something I can fix. And this one, Branches, is the last poem in the third section before that final poem after that. So that brings us to poems 15 and 16. And based on time, I will follow Dr. Anthony's directions. So these are the 16 poems. If you want me to throw a few more in there, I'm happy to do that. Or if we can move to Q&A after that, that would be wonderful. Either way, I want to make sure that I just reiterate right now how much of an honor and a pleasure it is to be here, and how grateful I am to those of you who are listening to this work. Thank you. Branches. And suddenly, expectedly, mothers started to reach their arms, fists to elbows, down their children's mouths and throats, into the sugar-laden lining of the stomach. Fathers did too. Husbands, their wives, their husbands' throats. Sisters, their brothers, their mothers, and my brothers even reached into a man on the street who was holding a paper crane. We'd been told we would find some new pleasure there. We had a notion the insides held answers to all our untenable questions. A teenager might go missing for days, so her mother would plunge down the tongues of the kid's friends. The missing girl's sister, alone in a bedroom, would choke on her own crackling elbows, grasping for what she might have forgotten. Each time an arm was pulled out of a mouth, it came coated. In short, once inside, the limb made a cast, like a silicone mold of whatever it had touched inside. These impressions, like pink dishwashing gloves made of blood, guts, and dinner, drew out of the head like a yawn. The coating sloughed whole off the arm, intact, peeled off as a swim cap, thick as wax, wriggling with rubbery veins. People would squeeze off these casts and leave them indiscriminately anywhere. They called these the branch of an arm for their likenesses to roots, to the trunks of young trees. Streets were littered with branches. In living rooms, people made shelves of the things. Having been asked through the stomach for answers, I myself grew a crop of unreachable questions. I phoned mother, told her I'd be coming home soon, then got a hold of her spleen and found nothing. I left her with those first little branches, dripping, inspected, and thrown on the eaves. I branched out to others, my sister, whose roof in Houston thatched casts of her husband's, her little boy's innards. Sequences of strangers whose bare naked knees ground my rug to its stitches, who entered through any obtainable hole, dropped into me for answers, and left empty-handed, the veins on their fingers in the cracks of my grin. I reached out to the preacher, but found only wafers and prison-grade beef. I littered the drippings of politicians and recycled a stack of historians' suppers. Of late, I've been thinking around the question of my sensitive lover's insides. I haven't reached often, though I wouldn't say never. His fifth and sixth kidneys are swinging on cords over the sink to dry. I reached deep, but not lately or again. We could make us a pact to prevent reaching, could stitch half our fingers together, could start fresh from so nice to meet you. See my lips, how they part like a seed? Listen, as I ask him to balance his fingers on the buds at the tip of my tongue. Watch how I trust the gap in his teeth without seeing whether my fist might fit through them. We could stop at the space at the edge of a lip with a trace of our fathers stitched into our hides, intestines in circles that coil around our feet with the sleeves of their innards as punctuation for our pores, their hair in the thick of our skin. We could listen. And this is the last poem in the manuscript, and it has a strange title. It's called Rhema, R-H-E-M-A. And in some apostolic traditions, rima is a concept that's tied to a notion. I know I look very apostolic right now. I'm realizing this as I say that word out loud. But in some traditions, this is a word tied to the ability of the Spirit to move a person. For one, you might associate it with speaking in tongues or hearing the voice of God. I am intrigued by the idea of listening, of being quiet enough to hear something larger than oneself speak. And so this is the poem where I finish the book and I listen to what it tells me. Rima. And in time, sure, love came with its delinquent terrors. Though you'd complain, life offered you too little. Though early in sobriety, you sniffed, as if for the first time, yellow roses by the bus stop. You thought nothing of the gasoline, stagnating rainbows and street puddles. With ropes at home tied around your wrists, you moaned, delighted to commit to one man, not one god taller than the halo you hung around his head. And in the negative space of the painterly view you take to life, the view where you stand centered on the canvas, I draped ribbons of grapes and dropped persimmons, which you and your lover crushed for their juices, then left to spoil. Speck of glitter in my eye, you think you're wise to cite violence and call me evil? On what scale? I relish my skin's living stench. Look at the redwoods, these my beloved daughters. When I speak fire, they'll roar. But consider all the space I left for spheres to float through quietly. You look only for the scales of life to fall softly from my table like rain into your mouth, every pleasure at once. Yes, I aim for balance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your language and your reading just washing over us is something to behold. Thank you. Their teeth, oranges, lilies. Are you kidding me? What?
Oh.
Fantastic. Anyway, we talked this afternoon about the unexpected and letting that
Right.
occur in language and letting language take you, where it takes you, and with a
Right.
film logic. But their teeth, oranges, lilies. My brain I didn't hear the rest of that poem because my brain it split like I was watching a David Lynch film or something. It
yes.
and just went, wait, so Lily's good, teeth orange, no, what?
Yeah.
Props. Where did that come from? There's our first question.
Oh, yeah. Let me think back to
the Q&A, everybody. Yeah, please, yeah. Where did that, what? That's fantastic. And what poem was that in again? Because I just remember the line.
Oh, how we touched each other's lips. Yeah, I think that's coming out soon. I can't remember where. I think that's coming out soon. I don't know which, I'm so sorry, I don't know which journal right now.
A good problem to have.
Yeah, humble brag, huh?
Fantastic.
I mean, so that's one of those poems, we were talking earlier in class about some of these that just come off the cuff. And sometimes, they're like full-born babies, and other times you've got the Eraserhead child and it needs some work to be, let out loose into the world. And this was one of those poems that went through so many different drafts. And I guess the thing that I was trying to figure out is how do I hold this complicated and beautiful moment? Like, love in institutions is not love. it's misassociation of arousal.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
yeah, it's beautiful. Uh, it's gorgeous to think that people at the very worst um, are still pursuing that connection. So I needed images like that. Strawberry stains on fingertips. I'm like, how sweet. We think of a stain as inherently and necessarily inconvenient, perhaps, or bad, but how sweet. And orange teeth, why not make it a flower? Why not make it beautiful?
Wow.
So that's
Fantastic. Thank you.
that.
Wow. Wow. We have a question from Sarah Shalom. She says she's a graduate in the creative writing graduate program here at Wilkes, the MFA program here. She says she followed along as you read the rabbit poem on your website. And she noticed that you've done some major revisions between what you previously published and the words you spoke this evening. She said, oh, good on you, Sarah. She says, I have always felt like once I've published something, whatever form, it must be considered done. Could you talk about your choice to revise post-publication? Also, why not go back and update your original post? By the way, I love your revisions. Great question, Sarah. Thank you.
So why not update? What was the first? So there is right before the why not update the post.
Yeah, let's see. Could you talk about your choice to revise post-publication?
Sure. Sarah, thanks so much for being here. And thank you for your attentive listening. You caught me. I mean, yeah, so, okay, I don't know. I'm just going to have an excuse for a response, basically. I don't know if it's good or bad to do this, but I think it was Picasso who said that a painting is never finished, it's only abandoned. And I started out as a painter, and I have never, ever been content with something that I've made. I just keep tweaking with it, or I sell it. The crisis of entering poetry is I can't completely it can't just exist in someone's living room. Like I can always open it back up and tinker. So the choice to revise post publication, I'll tell you more concretely what people wiser and more experienced than myself have said, which is the book is what matters. That we certainly want to have as polished a poem as possible in the journals, but that's just not the case. It's just not always the case that the poems that go to print in journals will be the version that makes it to the manuscript. In fact, I always track the books from our previous contributors to Southeast Review, and they frequently publish with different titles, with like major and minor revisions alike. So if you are a poet and that's a concern of yours, I'd say, don't worry about it. And then why not update my website? I kind of want all these different things to exist. In the same way that there are like 14 different ways people say my last name and I won't correct anyone. I'm really happy with there being and just in case you're wondering, Dr. Anthony, you said it the way I say it at home. So you've said my last name the same way we do, but so that's great. But if someone says like Linge or Ling or Lingy or whatever, I'm like, cool, let's have that too. I'm trying to run away from a sort of like, you know what, I'm going to stop there. I don't want to overspeak my response. I just like the idea of all of the versions existing somewhere and competing with each other.
Me too. Wow, that's awesome.
Oh, and let's see. So I see a couple of questions in the open. Dr. Anthony, am I allowed to read those?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
So Thomas says, thank you. I was wondering if I could say something about writing revision, process as concerns book. Yeah. So Thomas, let me just say that I have written hundreds of poems, hundreds of poems. And I have 46 in this book, you know, like, what happened was the book shaped itself, sometimes at the expense of poems that might be okay. But this is the type of project. It's a first book, and I've heard it said that a first book is what you survived, and the second book is how you continue to survive it. A first book that, in this case, very much is at least what I survived, and is also, I hope, part of how I continue to do so. It was just apparent to me that I needed to have what it was like and what it's like now. And so there had to be an in-between stage too. What happened to change those two things? So as with music concerts, there's no right way to do it. Hook 'em at the very beginning, play some fan favorites, and consider the pacing throughout would be my unsolicited advice. And let's see, progression, dynamic, structure. Yeah, Thomas, basically the most honest response is you can't give me too much credit. I write and I write and I write and I write, and then eventually I let the book take care of itself. I hope that's useful.
It's beautiful.
Okay, and I recognize this name. So we have Drew Shannon. I don't know if I'm supposed to say people's whole names. Sorry, Drew. We have Drew saying that here they are a literature professor in close contact with creative writing students at the university. And a lot of them have an interest in poetry. And we just had a young poet read at Biden's inauguration. How do I feel about the current state of poetry? And am I optimistic about the future? Oh my gosh. I mean, there is so much good poetry. There is so much good poetry right now. I don't know if there's been a time in history where this many people have access to circulating their poems. I mean, there's a literary journal. You can't throw a rock in America without hitting an editor on a literary masthead, I'm pretty sure. There's about one in like every MFA program, and there are young people who are just hungry, like me, to learn how to work this thing. And yeah, and so let me make sure that how do I feel about the current state of poetry? The thing that I didn't say before, because I didn't want to overspeak before, but part of the reason why I like the idea of having multiple forms of my poetry in the world is because I want to really shy away from what I've inherited as a sort of scarcity model of artistic output. I'm so accustomed to the mythologizing and the deification of this romantic notion of an isolated genius. And that's been so deeply ingrained in my psyche that I'm doing active work to be like, no, screw that. I'm going to have multiple versions of the poems out. I'm going to have really crappy poems published and good poems published. And I'm not going to bother worrying about like my ego or my reputation. I'm just going to enjoy the thing. And I feel that same way about appreciating other people's poems. It's just like, there are so many different things happening in this field right now, and so many fantastic, amazing, surprising ways that people write constantly challenges me, constantly makes me reconsider my assumptions about poetics. So I feel challenged and grateful to be writing when I am. And then you mentioned Amanda Gorman speaking at Biden's inauguration. How cool, how very cool, and what a gorgeous like articulation of that poem through movement. Oh my God. And if I could just afford that outfit, anybody, please. If we've got some patrons out in the audience who want to buy me Prada like that, I'm down. I am down to receive that incredible outfit. But yeah, how do I feel about it right now? And am I optimistic about the future? Yeah, I think that just being part of the conversation, and I'll stop here, just being part of the conversation, there's so much interesting tumult between members of the same generations and between different generations. There's so much tension about what consists, or what makes good poetry, which I think is hilarious personally. Because I'm like, like, I mean, can you imagine seeing like two cartoonists duking it out online and being like, your line is far too thick for a good cartoon. I'm just like, go home, have a beer, or have a non-alcoholic beverage. If you don't drink, and just write a poem. That's where I'm at with the subject.
Yes. Thank you. Wow. How has being the Southeast Review's editor-in-chief, how does that affect your approach to writing and to submitting, to sending work out?
Yeah. I mean, there's no greater education than having to read all the time. And that's part of the job, is I have to know what's happening everywhere. Like I have to know what people are doing and what they're looking for. And so I have this incredible privilege to spot significant poets and movements in their nascence. And so for me, that is just a delight, because my poetics is entirely enmeshed in today's conversations, informed. Don't get me wrong, informed by millennia of traditions, but like it's just so cool to be part of that process. Now, how does that affect my submissions? I will not give anyone advice about submissions because I am terrible at them. I'm so bad. Like some people are super strategic and responsible. The first poem that I read today, Fingers, that's one of those cases. I wrote the poem, I read it to, we had my committee co-chairs over for dinner, my partner and I decided to just randomly read it to everyone. David Kirby was like, hey, you should change the tense. And I was like, okay. So I did, and then I sent it off, and that was it. Like it was, I made it in a setting, gave it that shift change, and then I just sent it to poetry, which is the worst idea. By all intents and purposes, I should have spent forever revising it and coming. So that's just proof that there's no right way to do this thing, because it was the first poem in the issue that it came out in, and people have been really kind about it. So I don't have any advice. I do know how to write a better cover letter, though, from seeing a bunch of cover letters.
That makes sense. Are there any other questions this evening for Zach before we release him from his Wilkes experience? Give him a couple more minutes in case someone's typing.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for all your time with us today. You have embedded yourself into our campus in a beautiful way. And I'm so happy that we'll have this recording that you can use, that we can use. For students to see, and it's just wonderful.
It's been a joy and a pleasure.
Yeah. We got a couple of thank yous. One from my colleague, Dr. Helen Davis. Thank you for sharing your words and for painting such a moving journey in our minds. And my poet sister, Dawn Leese, who's an editor, one of the works on River and South, our MFA programs, literary review, wanted to say how much she enjoyed the reading and conversation. So Really appreciate that. And thank you, Dr. Tom Hamill, for your question too. Thanks everyone for being here. What a wonderful way to start off our Allan Hamilton Dickson 2021 Spring Writers Series. Thank you again, Zach.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.